Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into Alan Gratz's incredible novel, Refugee. It's a powerful story that follows three different kids on three separate journeys, decades apart, but all of them are searching for the exact same thing, a safe place to call home.
So let's meet our three young protagonists. First, there's Josef, a Jewish boy in 1930s Nazi Germany. Then we jump to Isabel, a girl trying to survive in Cuba during the 90s. And finally, we have Mahmoud, a boy whose world is torn apart by the Syrian civil war in 2015. Three kids, three different worlds, but you're going to see their stories are connected in some really surprising ways.
Okay, so what pushes a family to the breaking point? What makes them leave everything behind? Well, for these three, it wasn't really a choice. It was more like a violent shove out the door of the only home they'd ever known.
For Josef, the nightmare starts on Kristallnacht, the night of broken glass. Nazi stormtroopers smash into his apartment and drag his father away to the Dachau concentration camp. When his dad finally comes back 6 months later, he's a shell of a man. And he comes with a terrifying order. The family has to get out of Germany. They have 14 days.
Now, for Isabel in Cuba, the problem is starvation. After the Soviet Union collapses, Cuba's economy just tanks. People are hungry. Riots break out. And when Isabel's father joins in, he gets a target on his back. So for them, it's either flee to America on a makeshift boat, or her dad goes back to prison.
And then there's Mahmoud in Syria. His family has been trying to just survive the civil war for years. But one day, while he's just doing his homework, a missile hits their apartment building. It's just gone, reduced to rubble. And just like that, they have nothing left and absolutely no choice but to run.
You know, there's this one moment that just perfectly captures what it's like to be a civilian caught in the middle of a war. Some soldiers stop their car and ask, "Whose side are you on?" And Muhammad's little brother, Walid, just says, "We're against whoever is dropping the bombs on us." It's as simple and as complicated as that.
But getting out is just the first step. For every one of these families, the real trial is the journey itself, and it all happens on the water. At first, Joseph's journey feels almost like a dream. He and over 900 other Jewish refugees board this massive ocean liner, the MS St. Louis, heading for Cuba. I mean, compared to Nazi Germany, this ship is paradise. They've got movies, incredible food, even a swimming pool. There's this feeling of hope.
Isabel's experience could not be more different. Her family, along with their neighbors, are all crammed into this tiny, ugly boat they built themselves out of scrap metal. It's constantly leaking, and they're out there in the open ocean, trying to dodge storms and, get this, giant oil tankers. It is a total nightmare.
And Mahmoud's journey, it's somehow even worse. They pay smugglers for a spot on this tiny rubber dinghy packed with 30 other people. The smugglers literally just take their money, push the boat into the Mediterranean Sea, and leave. Eventually, a wave flips the dinghy, and everyone is thrown into the cold, dark water.
So you'd think after surviving all that, the worst would be over, right? Wrong. Reaching a new country doesn't mean you're safe. Sometimes that's when the real heartbreak begins.
Josef's ship makes it all the way to Havana Harbor. They can see freedom, but the Cuban government won't let them off the boat. And every single day, the officials tell them the same thing, mañana, tomorrow. But for them, tomorrow never seems to arrive.
Mahmoud's family actually makes it out of the sea. They walk across Greece and Serbia trying to get to Germany. But when they reach the Hungarian border, they're met with a brand new fence topped with razor wire. And then soldiers start firing tear gas into the crowd. They're treated like criminals, not like human beings desperate for help.
For Isabel, her entire journey turns into this high-stakes race against time because of a bizarre U.S. policy. It was called wet foot, dry foot. It basically meant if you were a Cuban refugee and the Coast Guard caught you at sea, wet foot, they'd send you right back. But if you managed to touch American soil, dry foot, you could stay. The difference between freedom and failure was literally a few feet of water.
And this brings us to a really tough part of the story. Because even for the families that make it, for the ones who survive, freedom comes with a truly terrible price.
Each family suffers a loss that's just unimaginable. Mahmoud's family has to give his baby sister Hannah to strangers on another boat during the shipwreck, not knowing if they'll ever see her again. Isabel watches her best friend get killed by sharks right in front of her, and then her own grandfather sacrifices himself so the others can reach the shore. And Josef, his family is denied entry everywhere and sent back to Europe right into the hands of the Nazis.
And this is the moment.
The moment where these separate stories just crash into each other. As the Coast Guard boat gets closer, Isabel's grandfather, Lido, makes a confession. It's something he's been hiding for more than 50 years, and it changes everything.
Remember that word mañana? The word that tortured Josef and the passengers on the St. Louis? Well, it turns out that as a young police officer in 1939, Isabel's grandfather was one of the men on the docks in Havana who refused to let that ship land. He was one of the people who sent them away. It's a gut punch of a reveal, connecting these two kids across 50 years of history.
Now let's go back to Mahmoud because he has this huge shift in perspective. Back in Syria, his whole survival strategy was to be invisible. Don't draw attention. But when he's locked up in a Hungarian detention center, he has a breakthrough. If you're invisible, the good people can't see you to help you. So he makes a choice. He chooses to be seen. He walks out of the camp and starts a march to Austria that hundreds of others join.
And Mahmoud's choice to be visible brings us right back to Josef and to the very real cost of being invisible, of being turned away. This number right here? This isn't just part of the story.
254. That's how many of the real-life passengers on the actual MS St. Louis were murdered in the Holocaust after Cuba, the US, and Canada all refused to let them in. The book grounds Josef's story in this absolutely devastating historical fact.
But the story doesn't end in complete tragedy. There's a glimmer of hope. Isabel starts a new life in Miami and finally learns to hear the hidden beat of Cuban music, her clave. And then, in the final, incredible twist, Mahmoud's family is sponsored to live in Germany. They're welcomed into the home of an elderly woman named Ruthie Rosenberg, who, we realize, is Josef's little sister. She survived, and now she's offering the safety to Mahmoud's family that her own family was denied so long ago.
So the book leaves us with this really powerful question, one that comes directly from Mahmoud's journey. It makes you ask yourself, what does it mean to witness suffering? And do we have the courage not just to look, but to truly see?